Good afternoon. How are you all doing?
Hi.
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you as a clinician, as a patient, as a consumer of healthcare, and really as a member of this society, which I think is wandering aimlessly in these days, and hopefully some of what I've learned really through significant health crises has actually allowed me to gain some peace that I want to share with you in my new book that I've released in September. It's called Clear, Living the Life You Didn't Dream of. So let me ask you, 1991, at approximately 1 o'clock. Come on, somebody must know. Well, I know exactly what I was doing, because that was the time that I died. I had a sudden death cardiac arrest that day at this community health center on that basketball floor, suddenly, without warning. Now, as you might imagine, I have some feelings about dying that day, and I guess the first one I would say is I wouldn't recommend it. And a cardiac arrest is a pretty interesting way to go out if you're fortunate enough to be resuscitated. You have significant memory loss. I had significant chest pain from compressions that had to be continued for 10 minutes, which I'll talk about in a minute. But let me see if I can create a visual for you. So imagine there are two lines. There's one line to have a cardiac arrest, and there's another line to get an enema from Tony and Reggie Eady, okay? So if I had to choose between those, wait a minute, that's probably not a good example, hold on. Suppose you had the choice of having a cardiac arrest or being in a hotel with Trump and his tighty-whities, okay? I'd be in the tighty-whitey line and I'd be in the enema line, okay? To give you an example. So, all kidding aside, it was a very stressful time for me in my life. And it really occurred at what I would call a tipping point because I had prepared for 13 years to become an orthopedic surgeon. And it seemed like everything that needed to be put in place was finally, all the layers were put in place. Let me just tell you a little bit about that process. And let me start with this quote from Brian Tracy, because to me it all comes down to dreaming. The starting point of great success and achievement has always been the same. It's for you to dream big dreams. There's nothing more important, nothing that works faster than you to cast off your own limitations and begin dreaming and fantasizing about things that you can become. So for me and my family, there was no one in my family who was a physician. My parents did go to college, but all of their siblings never went to college. So for me to say that I wanted to be a doctor was, it was like, wow, okay, sure, whatever you say. But everybody encouraged me. Let me just talk about that process and some of those dreams. So obviously I wanted to be a fireman. How many people want to be a fireman? Right? Everybody? Okay. I wanted to be a policeman. How many people? Policeman? Right? Right. I grew up in Los Angeles. Everybody in LA wants to be an actor. Okay. I wanted to be an NFL player, and believe it or not, I thought I could. In high school, I was the sweet number of 5'11" and 135 pounds, and I knew that I was going to play professional football. And finally, when I realized how stupid that was, I decided I wanted to be a doctor. And I said, no, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be a world-class doctor. Not only do I want to be a world-class doctor from a world-class institution, I want to be a professional doctor that will come back to Los Angeles at the world-class Curlin Joe Clinic that took care of all the LA teams, the Lakers, the Rams, the Angels, everything. That was my dream. And I overcame a lot of obstacles. My high school counselor told me, I said, look, I want to go to an Ivy League school and I want to become a doctor. And he looked at me and he said, you will never get into an Ivy League school. Of course, I didn't let that bother me. I finally was able to get into Amherst College, the #2 school in America. And I'm not bragging, I'm telling you to understand the blocks that I put in place. And my counselor at Amherst told me, you will never be a doctor. So I finally made it into medical school at Boston University School of Medicine. I actually rotated through the Curlin Jobe Clinic as a medical student. And my friends told me, you will never get into orthopedics. Nobody gets into orthopedics. So I finally got into orthopedics. I'm 3rd out of 4 years in orthopedics, applying to my fellowship. And on October 28th, 1991, I had a cardiac arrest, and all of that went out the window. Oh, and I wanted to show you this. The irony of this, and those of you may not be able to see it, but I'll read it here. The irony is that this really isn't about race, but race plays a role because I, as an African-American male, thought I had a realistic goal of joining the NFL. 0.8% of people who play ball in high school make it to the NFL. But I felt more confident about that than I did about being a doctor. Is that amazing? That's the message that's out there in society. And so I gained some clarity about what my role in life was. Hence the name Clear. I'll talk more about Clear, what it means. But also I ended up living a different life than I had dreamed of. A blessed life, a life that actually, quite frankly, I think I'm a better chief clinical officer than I was as an orthopedic surgeon. And I have more of an impact now as the head of 16 hospitals across America than I ever would have had as a surgeon one-on-one, trying to make change a patient at a time. And so the point is here, we don't know what our path is. But a lot of us had to reconcile that what you dreamed about all your life, your path was different than that. And I've been able to live a blessed life in taking that journey. So let's go back to the cardiac arrest. You know who saved me? Are there any anesthesiologists? Could you come up for a minute?
Go, Jack.
Yes. I love you, man. Thank you.
So we're anesthesiologists that saved you.
5 anesthesia residents saved my life. Right place, right time. I lived in Seattle. Seattle had the highest rate of people surviving out-of-hospital cardiac arrest in the country. I was on an anesthesia basketball team, so I had 4 people from a level 1 trauma center. My wife was the scorekeeper. She saw me go down. She yelled immediately, and they started CPR on me immediately. I had a VFib arrest. I had had symptoms prior to that where I was lightheaded. I had a complete workup, echo, treadmill, everything, and guess what? Everything was normal. They wanted to put me on antiarrhythmics, but my cardiologist said, the symptoms from the antiarrhythmic will be worse than the symptoms you're feeling from almost passing out. Now, as it turned out, that was a blessing in disguise because I would later get in a clinical trial, and the only way you could get in the clinical trial was to have had a cardiac arrest outside of the hospital. And if I had been put on antiarrhythmics, it probably would have delayed it, and who would have known where I would have ultimately had that cardiac arrest. But imagine, are there any orthopedic surgeons in here? Imagine if I had had my cardiac arrest at the orthopedic grand rounds. You know those guys who think that the heart only exists to pump blood to the bone? Those guys? Right? Can you imagine? Oh shit, I think I broke him. So I was blessed not to have had that arrest somewhere else in the hospital at rounds, but in the right place at the right time. These are the statistics from 2013 on your chances of survival of a hospital cardiac arrest. Now, this was in 1991. So there I was on the ground, lifeless, no heartbeat, no breath, cyanotic, with 4 of my colleagues doing CPR. In walks the EMT with their defibrillator. They put the defibrillator on me and they say, "Clear!" Nothing happens. Holy cow, the defibrillator is broken. It doesn't work. Resume CPR. CPR continues for another 2 minutes, and finally the paramedics arrive with a defibrillator that worked, and they were able to get me into normal sinus and got me to Harborview emergency room where I did my residency training. And imagine, I could just hear it, 31-year-old black male in arrest, being brought into the ER, be ready, and they wheel in Herman Williams, one of their fellow residents who just had a cardiac arrest. So they got me to the MICU. I was intubated, things coming out of every hole possible. My wife sitting there wondering if, 1, I was going to wake up, 2, if I knew who she was when I did wake up, and 3, would he remember that we were going to get married in 4 months? So this happened 4 months before I was scheduled to get married. I finally woke up, extubated myself, vomited, aspirated, and I only say that to say that I ended up with aspiration pneumonia. I ended up with line sepsis, and we were laughing here at the presentation. Wish we had one of those guided things to put the central line in, but I ended up with line sepsis, and I was in the hospital essentially for 28 days recovering from a cardiac arrest. I could hardly breathe because I was in so much pain from the ongoing compressions. In walks a cardiologist who says, "We have a new clinical trial. We've got this great device, and it is designed to detect when you have an arrhythmia, and if you have an arrhythmia, it will simply shock you out of your arrhythmia. It's like having your own little paramedic. Would you like to join the trial?" And I said, "Wow, that sounds really great, but wouldn't that hurt?" He goes, "Oh, no, that won't hurt. It just feels like a strong hiccup." I am still looking for that man today. Still looking for him, because has anyone in here ever been shocked or seen a patient be shocked? It is incredibly painful. 45 joules of current coming from inside out to stop a cardiac arrest. And I can tell you, I have, and I'll talk more about that now, but I have felt it a couple times. Now, this is an interesting, I don't know if you guys can see that, but at this time, back in 1991, you had to have a thoracotomy. They actually opened your chest. They put these patches around your heart, and then I had a little can that sat right here, and you can still see the imprint from the pacemaker can that used to sit here. Now, of course, 5 PCDs later, it's up here, and it's an intravascular insertion. But that was what I got. So after 28 days, after being in bed, after having line sepsis, after having a pneumonia, I developed esophagitis. I couldn't leave the floor. I was in a hospital. I could not leave the CCU because of the monitoring requirements for 28 days on one floor. When I finally was able to get discharged, my wife had to wheel me out of the hospital in a wheelchair because I couldn't walk. And so I had to start all over, trying to figure out, I celebrated, I'm out of the hospital, but stop, you can't be an orthopedic surgeon anymore because now you have a defibrillator. By the way, the company that put the defibrillator in said that, we figured out that there is a chance that the bovie might accidentally cause your defibrillator to fire. So immediately my surgical career was history. And even if that wasn't the case, can you imagine if I was doing surgery and I got shocked? And I had to say surgery over and wake the patient up. Oh, we stopped because your doctor got shocked and couldn't finish the surgery. So my career as a surgeon was over. So I started rebuilding, building my new dream with my new partner, my defibrillator, and my soon-to-be wife. And everything was fine. We decided to go to see our priest one day to talk about what it was like to be married. And we were late. And I got really anxious. I'm like, we got to get out of here. We got to go. And I hopped up and all of a sudden, bam, my first shock. And I was like, oh my God, what was that? And I realized, I called my wife. I said, oh my God, I think I just got shocked. And so one shock, I said, hey, one shock a year, no problem. Every couple of years, if that's all I have to deal with, it's okay, it's fine. A week later, my brother, who is a cardiologist, came to visit me, and we were walking down the hallway to get the mail, and as we were walking, bam, shock number 2. And he starts laughing. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? He said, I heard about this technology. I didn't think it worked. It works, it works. And I said, but it hurts. And we laugh about that today. But that was number 2. And I said, okay, 2 shocks a year. I can deal with that. Not a big deal. We get married. We go to St. Martin. We're on the beach. We're having all kinds of fun. We're getting ready to come back to America. And bam, shock number 3. In the Caribbean with an investigational device. And thank God we didn't have to go to a hospital or anything. We just said, okay. And I mean, today, if you get shocked, it's not a big deal. They say as long as your heart rate's normal, it did what it was supposed to do. There's no need to go to the ER, only if you get shocked multiple times. So I got shocked once, cool. So now we're on 3 shocks in 2 months. So now I'm beginning to catch on, okay? If I'm in a hurry, then that could potentially trigger a shock, or if I'm a little bit emotional, that can trigger a shock. So we had our wedding reception at our house, and at that wedding reception I had my ICU nurse, I had all of our friends, we were celebrating our wedding, and I'm in front of all these people, and I'm like, I just want to tell everybody how much I appreciate what you've done for me, and bam! 7 shocks. So we ran to the ER. Finally, we got to the ER. They increased the dosage of my medication. So now we're at 10. 10 shocks. And I said, okay, look, 10 shocks a year, I can deal with that, okay? As long as I don't get more than 10 shocks. But quite frankly, and this is just the BAM count, this began to control my life. I was afraid to leave the house because I didn't want to get shocked in public. I was afraid that if I said defibrillator, because I was so superstitious that I would get anxious and all of a sudden I would get shocked. I could not say the word. Do you realize how ridiculous that is? I could not say the word defibrillator. I began to have phantom shocks. Who's heard of phantom shocks? Phantom shocks are documented where people actually, while they're asleep, dream that they were shocked and wake up, and then they interrogate the device and find out that you weren't actually shocked, but it's for people who've had 10 shocks in 2 months. I finally got the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress syndrome because I literally was depressed. I didn't want to leave the house. I couldn't drive. You have to be defibrillator free for 6 months before you can get behind the wheel. And obviously I had lost my career. So even though it seemed like things were over, I still thanked God for being able to be resuscitated and to kind of get on my way, get back to really understanding the basics of life. So I came up with the ABCs of life, and I use ABCs because we use them for CPR. A is to let's first acknowledge what our limitations are or what has happened, whether that's a serious life event to us, a loved one. Acknowledge that and deal with it. And ideally, if you go a step farther, accept, right? The first thing before change is accepting that you have a reason to change, right? B is for breathe, which really means relax. Take a deep breath and relax. And for me, my relaxation is meditation. I meditate every day. All I ask for is for you to give 20 minutes to yourself every morning and meditate. I know Bill was talking this morning about everybody. No, it wasn't Bill. It was, who was it? Randall was saying, if I could have things my way, we would all meet at 6 o'clock in the morning and we'd all just talk and relax and talk about ourselves and what's on our minds and clear our heads before we actually start seeing patients. Give yourself 20 minutes of silence in the morning, just thinking about your day and relaxing. Let all the stress go. Because you as leaders, the people you're leading are looking at you to mimic. So if you're high-strung, if you're stressed, if you're angry, if you're pissed, if you're caring, all that stuff, that's the way they look. And they say, well, that must be the way to lead. Right? Guys, there's no rocket science here. I'm just telling you stuff that you probably already know. I'm just trying to put another layer on it for you. But the big one for me is C, live a life of compassion. Some of you have heard it as servant leadership. And when I came out with this scale, I had a very dear friend of mine. She said, look, I understand all that, but I'm not compassionate. I don't even know how to be compassionate. And so I came up with the kindness scale. And there are 4 levels on the kindness scale. Level 1 is just a simple smile. Okay? Everybody practice a level 1 every day. Just smile at somebody. Make that your goal for the rest of the week. Every day, I'm going to smile at somebody I don't know. I'm just going to smile. And I guarantee you 99.9% of the time, you will get a smile back. Okay? So basic things, smile. Okay? Number 2, level 2, and I'm going to whip through these. Open a door for somebody. I travel so much and I see these moms with kids. They've got like 3 kids and they've got the baby pack and they've got the stroller and they're like, doing this on a plane, right? And everybody's looking at them, not helping them. Help somebody. Just help somebody. Pick up some trash. Clean up the counter when you're done in the bathroom. Do something that takes energy for the person behind you. Go to Starbucks through the drive-up and say, I want to pay for the person behind me. I don't want them to even know who I am. I want them to come up and find out a complete stranger paid for their coffee. Just do something kind. Level 3. This takes effort. Okay? Get involved with someone's care. You're all, there are a lot of physicians and clinicians in here. I tell all my friends, if you or anyone is in the hospital, let me call the person, the doctor taking care of you, because it sends a signal to the provider that you have resources. And how many people know? The care changes, right? Because all of a sudden we know, there's somebody on the other end who's going to be looking at what we're doing, so I better be on my best. And I would make a phone call, and I have seen the nursing staff totally change once they know there's a physician involved. And that's just the way it is. But healthcare is a maze, and I offer that to anyone. So do something that takes time. It takes a phone call. It takes time out of your day. And I've experienced all these. People have all done these for me, especially this next one, right? The level 4, the maximum level of kindness, is to actually put yourself at risk. Give CPR to somebody. I had a mother who, it turned out her daughter had lupus, and They were looking all over to find a person who was compatible. And it turned out the mom was compatible with her daughter, and she donated her kidney to her daughter. And my wife told me about a woman in her Bible study course who donated a kidney to someone she didn't know. What? Can you imagine that? Putting yourself at risk, not knowing whether you're going to ever need that kidney, but giving a kidney to somebody else. So that's the highest level of kindness. And I think if we practice these things, this would be a very different society. Okay? We don't have to agree, but if I treat you with respect, at least you'll sit down with me and we'll begin to talk and we'll find some common ground. But if you don't respect me, or I don't respect you, or I can't open a door for you, we're nowhere. And quite frankly, that's where we are today. I love this quote. The best thing about the future is it comes one day at a time. I just want to share it with you. It's a good quote. But this is, Irving Berlin said, life is 10% of what you make it, 90% of how you take it, right? Here's me. Life is 10% of what happens to you, but 90% of how you respond to it, right? Somebody cuts you off in traffic. What do? Oh, damn it, I'm going to catch up to that person, right? Or if you're in California, oh, where's my gun? Right? You read about it every day. What? How about maybe that person's mother is in the ED and they're trying to get it there. We're not even thinking of you, right? 90% of how you respond to it. You can choose to be angry, or you can say, well, okay, I guess they were in a bigger hurry than I was. And I realize that because when I get nervous and angry, my heart starts beating fast and my chance of getting shot go up, right? So I'm aware of, okay, I almost got mad that time. But so think about it. It's up to you to interpret how you're going to respond, right? Okay, epilogue. So things are great. I've got a new job. I got fired from Vanguard by tenant. I don't want to talk about your bosses, but that was a blessing for me. Got another job. Things are just banging. I'm having fun. I'm in the best shape I've ever been in. It's the day after Mother's Day 2017. My mother's alive. My wife's with my son. I'm at the B&A International Airport on my way to go to Portland. I'm fixing my bagel and my boiled egg, and boom! I had another cardiac arrest 9 months ago. But the beauty of it, and again, folks, this ain't about race, but race plays a role. When I listen to what all the bullshit that's going on television and in this country, and supremacists and this and that, and I go down and a white male who does not know me from Adam makes the decision that he is going to go down and do CPR and put his lips on my lips, now it's about people, right? That blows me away. That someone would take that risk. And the most important thing is he says, yeah, I'm doing CPR on you. He says, I haven't had CPR in 47 years, but I'm doing it. and he says, and all of a sudden, your eyes rolled up in the back of your head. And he goes, oh my God, this man is going to die. And he says, I start pumping harder, and all of a sudden you went, but he said, I'm in the middle of doing this. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're the difference between whether this man is going to live or not. So, I mean, to me, that's overwhelming. I just don't understand all this stuff that's going on here. But it's up to us to make that difference. And that's the journey I'm on with my book, is I believe that this happened for a reason. So, and I'm trying to prevent you from having 2 cardiac arrests and a stroke to understand it. So, Tony, thank you. Reggie, thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk to you all. Thank you for your time. And I'll pause for questions. Thank you.